It is early September. I enter Kreuzberg 61's town hall through the main entrance, passing by a porter's lodge. A man is barely visible behind glass, gently lit from the side by a small table lamp. Half his shape disappears in the shadows outside the lamp's cast. Stairs lead me to the second floor. Entering into a waiting area, several connected rows of benches placed along a bank of windows in front of me. Sunlight pours in through the trees, aligning the town hall's facade, impressing their shadows upon the floor. The treated window glass filters the sunlight, pale blue, violet, changing the temperature and tone of the room. I take a place in safe distance to a woman seated at a right angle to me. Interrupting my waiting, my eyes catch the trees gently swinging in the wind as their shadows animate a subtle unease I hadn't noticed earlier. Their movements are slow and hypnotic, adding contrast to the interior's still and silent space. It is one of many corridors along an arm extending in both directions parallel to the road outside. Once in a while, the corridors reverberate with plastic shoe soles creaking along the synthetic floors, doors opening and closing with differing force. I pull a piece of paper out of my trouser pocket. It's an old boarding pass from a flight to Lisbon. Between the airline's abbreviations and codes, I'd scribbled down a number that a synthetic voice, seemingly gendered female, read to me on the phone a few weeks prior. Eyes wandering around the room, I find a screen I hadn't recognized before. The screen is mounted in a corner, where the two walls of the corridors and the ceiling meet, just near the stairwell. The flickering image on the LED screen is separated into 3 fields. First 2 display numbers assigned to customers awaiting their calling. The third field screens images of the district's sites. The numbers currently on screen showed no numeric resemblance to the number I had written down. I start to draft various scenarios regarding the apparent discrepancy of these numbers. I begin to worry. Had I noted the wrong number, or even the wrong date? Must I call again? And if I must, would I be able to speak to a real person? Or would I be assigned another synthetic number, not to be called until weeks into the future? The current count appears to have stagnated. In my hermetic weighing of options, a present nervously unfolds in my mind. In the isolation of the waiting area, I imagine a clerk behind one of the closed office doors in the corridor, browsing through stacks of files, fingering through sheets of paper, affixing a paperclip here or there, soon spotting the twisted logic of numbers. Turning my head, I realize the woman sitting next to me is inadvertently producing the sounds to my streaming thoughts, sifting through a folder of papers, perhaps the necessary documents for her appointment. Her activity with her papers continues as if searching for something. I close my eyes in waiting. The moving shadows of the trees continue their motion in the dim glow of my closed lids. The woman and I stand in the centre of the room, on either side of a pedestal that supports a glass vitrine that I hadn't noticed before. Behind us, a man enters from another corridor. The woman and I briefly meet eyes. Synchronously, our heads turn toward the man, who takes no notice of us. He strolls through the room, his slippers clapping against his heels. The audible echo lingers long after he disappears into another corridor, and presumably, in the eventual absence of sound, into a closed room. I look back at her and sense my expression of perplexity raised in my eyebrows. Slightly bothered by my perplexed expression, she rolls her eyes, then raises her eyebrows and lowers her head, gesturing toward the glass vitrine. A miniature wooden model of the administrative district sits in the vitrine. Its shape is slightly rough. Its details appear rather abstract, almost of an expressionist style. The contrasting appearance is beguiling. The wood suggests an early modern antique, although its nameplate is dated 1994. From my bird's eye view, I wander east from the city hall, over a bridge, arriving at the riverbank where the dimensions of the hospital stand out in comparison to the neighbouring buildings. Another pass through and I realise several buildings seem to be missing. A vast area behind the park appears to have been left unrealised, yet the carving is so rough I can't decipher the crude strokes as something or nothing. I continue to navigate the dated excerpt of the city, imagining the cacophony of district sounds produced each day. My eyes glide through the blunt carving, now permeated by a simultaneity of voices. The voices of humans, the voices of animals, the voices of machines, the voices of media, the voices of music. These voices range in frequency, from high to low, singular to repetitive. Gradually they lose focus, contrast, and reference points. I notice my imagination and its oral projections propelled by the vacuum within the vitrine and the symbolic value it impels. The woman begins tapping her fingernails on the vitrine's glass. She plays her nails over the surface in a marching-like rhythm that interrupts my navigation. I look up at her and suddenly notice she'd been whispering for a while. The movements of her mouth and lips and their subsequent sound are delayed for a moment, creating an uncanny lapse in or between time and cognition. She stops tapping, wiping her fingernails over the glass. The sound of slowly tapping nails, now a soft swiping noise. She whispers, "I imagine it would be interesting to record this. We'll need a new type of microphone able to hear such frequencies. We must record this." Her whispering lingers in my mind until, after a time, I realise the sound has actually lapsed. Silence returns, captively taking hold of my thoughts, gravitating away from a day's slumber of singular, disparate, constructed elements listening in my unconscious.